All right, hey, what's up, guys? It's Mike and Doug from 40K Dirtbags, and Doug had this idea a couple days ago to go over not only our lists, but how we are planning for the Nova GT coming up in 2 weeks. And so the concept is we're going to talk about our list, and we're going to talk about two missions each as far as our first turn and our second turn, talk strategy, and just to get a little bit more insight on the pre-planning things that you can do as as a new player or even a veteran player, to get ready for anything from a local game to an RTT all the way up to a grand tournament.
Yeah, well said, man. I think one thing that, just the reality is anything you think about in advance is going to make it easier to make a good decision while you're playing your game. So taking the time to map out the deployments, at least, if not your first turn, especially if you're going to spend the time to go to a GT and really tear it up. I think it's a really good way to do it, and it's kind of fun. And honestly, it's been really helpful for me for tweaking the last 200 points of my list. The more I tried to deploy and figure out how I want to do it, the more clear it made me where I was missing stuff and what kind of tools I wanted that I wasn't quite having. So yeah, let's kick this off. Why don't you get us started and tell us about your list, man?
Okay, cool. So I went back to Raiders. I spent some time with Veterans of the Long War, went to a GT. I did okay. It just didn't have all of the tools that I needed. I did like the tools that it had, but it didn't necessarily fit the way that I wanted to play. So I went back to Raiders.
You want to click on that slide?
I'm sorry?
You want to click on that slide?
All right, cool. So this is the list. So I'm running 2 Chaos Lords. I've got Cypher as my Warlord. I've got 1 Dark Commune and a Master of Executions. He's got the enhancement for Dread Reaver. I've got, again, kind of the Noah's Ark build. So 2 Cultists, 2 Legionnaires, 2 Rhinos, the Accursed Cultist to go with the Dark Commune, 2 Predators, both with las cannons, autocannons, 2 Chosen, 2 Nurglings, and 2 Rubric Marines. I'd been messing around with who the Master of Executions goes with. The last RTT I went to, he was with the Chosen, but I think I'm going to put him with the Legionnaires, and I'd rather spend a CP for Advance and Charge, because then I can sequence free 4 rerolls to hit and wound, and then, save the other CP for other things. And then, the Lords with the Chosen are kind of, they're self-sufficient. And then I've got 1 throwaway Legionnaire unit, and in general, the big difference for me running this is I just have way more units than I'm used to running. So there, to Doug's point earlier, things that you can pre-plan. I've got a couple different modes or variations of things that start on the board and things that start in strat reserves. Right now, my kind of standard loadout is going to be minimum 1 Nurglings on the board, maybe 2. That is opponent dependent, but 1 Rubric Marine squad in strat reserves, 1 and definitely the Dark Commune in strat reserves as well. As far as starting in the Rhino, and I got this idea from Doug last year, is by putting a Cultist squad in a Rhino starting turn 1, because the infantry's not really doing anything turn 1 as far as my heavy hitting little missiles that I send out. So having the Cultist in the Rhino starting gives me an extra 3-inch movement for them to set up a screen or just send out the cheapest unit to to go tag an objective. Locust. I'm sorry?
Yeah. I mean, Locust, Area of Denial, you got to have a plan for scoring these turn 1. Really you want to have it every game. And Cultist and a Rhino, just like you said, that's 9 inches, it's 50 points. That's like a steal.
Yeah, for sure. Versus a 70-point squad of bikes, or even a 90-point my throwaway Legionnaire squad. Cool.
So one thing also, real quick, I want to talk about one other thing really interesting here, if you want to roll back real quick.
Yeah.
So Cypher, obviously, strong Derek influence, but plays really well with this game plan because he's going to have kind of staging positions where he's going to throw out these missiles from, and Cypher is going to help keep them safe because people are going to have even tougher time cracking through Rhinos behind walls. And there are a surprising number of armies that are really good right now that actually have a serious problem with rhinos behind walls, but there are very few armies that can run that and keep up in other ways. So it hasn't been a big issue. And, this is kind of a test in some ways to see if you can really make it work. And one of the things I like about the Master of Executions here with Dread Reaver, as opposed to a Chaos Lord, is that his buff always works. So exactly like Mike said, he's going to get full hit and wound rerolls, or at least wound rerolls of 1, even off an objective, hitting any target. And that's super valuable. You can, like you said, you can advance and charge and go chase stuff. But that is, he gets full hit and wound rerolls, but his squad sucks. If it's just Chaos Lord, his squad just sucks. 5 Chosen or 5 Legionnaires way worse. But now if they got hit rerolls, Legionnaires give wound rerolls, that is a much more overall threatening unit. And it's pretty cheap, 185 points for like a serious heavy hitter that can easily do more than that.
Yeah, for sure. And then, running the Lords with the Chosen, they're already getting advanced shoot and charge, fallback shoot and charge inherently, and then I do the 1 CP strat for 4 rerolls to hit and wound from them. So,
or 0 CP even, which is so nice now.
Yeah, exactly. Which it's funny that so a couple things, like since the change with the update to where now you can't sequence it twice. But the -1 CP is awesome, but it's very dependent on like, are you going first or are you going second, right? Versus like if I'm going second, then I can use the Lord strat like and not really have to think about the future, because then the next round it kind of resets the whole thing. Versus if I'm going first, I have to be a little bit more protective of that ability, because then in my opponent's turn, he can, I don't get to use it for free. Something that I've really liked doing is, let's say my Cursed Cultist unit on my turn charges in, does what it needs to do, but doesn't necessarily kill the unit. I can, fight again in my opponent's turn, because I'm still going to get the +1 to hit, +1 to wound, ability, and then at the end of his fight phase, that's when I do the fallback 6 inches. So then on my following turn, then I get to recharge and then go back in. So you essentially can sequence it to 3 iterations of fighting first.
And what's even, just incredible too here is that squad gets whittled down. It's going to happen very often. Typically you give up your little guys before or after you give up maybe the Mind Witch. And then you give up your Blessed Blades, and then you have like a dark, you have your guy given the 5++, and then the Icon, and then your big guys. But if you get under 12 models, you can just hop in a Rhino and hop back out for full hit rerolls, hit and wound rerolls, which is just so good. And it will almost, maybe it will never come up if you have 1, but there are more and more Raiders lists with like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And I've just had one test game where I got to do it, and it felt so dirty to give them full hit and wound rerolls with like with 66 plus 12 attacks and sustains, and it was just awesome. It reminded me of the good old days back, in the Chaos Winter, where Manny Chima won the World Championship. So, right. Yeah, and so this looks great. Obviously, super clean list, very well put together. Show us what you got for round 1.
Cool. So round 1 is Mission A, take and hold and raise banners. So again, it's hold 1, hold 2, hold 3, and then you get one victory point to your secondary scoring per objective that you have battle line on. So again, if you have battle line starting, on your home objective, you will minimum get 1. But the overall strategy that I've found with this list is, at least the way I play it and the way that it works in my head, is I essentially need to, and you'll see in the next slide, but I essentially need to stage, and I need to do 2 things. I need to bait my opponent to get onto objectives, because then all of my, +1 AP kicks off, and then a lot of my strats require the opponent or the enemy unit to be on an objective. So the unfortunate way to kind of deal with Raiders is to kind of slow play the objective game and go after the Rhinos. But again, like if you're slow playing that, I have so much battle line. I have, 18 units. So like it's it is more of a trade type of army, which that is new for me, like learning like 40K versus going straight into something like Drakari or something, which I just, I don't think I'm just not into them. But this is kind of like a little bit kind of multiple units. I'm sending something out to force my opponent to do something. So that's kind of the way that I've been playing it recently. And then it's okay to be a little lower on primary, and then I just need to have the secret mission in mind, whether it's hold 3 objectives by the end, or kill all their battle line and get one of my battle lines into their deployment zone, which is nice having 6 battle line units between the rubrics, the legionnaires, and then the cultists.
And the Nurglings. Let's not count this out here. This is a Raise Banners mission. You put 1 Nurgling squad touching 2 objectives. You put a Rhino out there. It just checks if to get your 1 point. You just need a battle line unit on an objective you control. So Nurglings can't do it alone, but they'll trigger it for anything else. So that's like huge. You can guarantee 4 of your 5 Raise the Banners points on turn 1 if you go first. It's like so easy. But then if you want to do attrition, keeping one of those alive is really good. I would say that everyone should know that we have some preliminary data, and the 2 that win the most are going to be Shatter Cohesion, which is everything under half strength, battle shocked, or off objectives, and Unbroken Wall, which is hold 3 in the middle. Those have like 65% win rates when they're successful. Command Insertion's like 50%. And then Attrition, the battle line, only has like a 40-something% win percentage. But one thing that was observed in the data is that was a lot of people who are going first who were trying to battle line like that. And that's a terrible idea. Don't ever do that.
Right.
If you're going to take War of Attrition, you have to be going second. If you're going first, you gotta go Shatter Cohesion. You gotta plan to table them. That's your secret mission. Or kind of Unbroken Walls. Also, like you've tabled them to the point where they can't clear you. That's also basically the same plan. So yeah, I think Mike's a lot of cool things. I think some stuff I see here, you're keeping bikes spread out to make sure you have different things to occupy space. They can't get behind you. Rhinos all have places they can run up and stage. Your Predators can kind of move up and get multiple firing lines. I love the 1 squad of rubrics there, keeping people honest. There's a lot of people who want to throw something out onto an objective, and rubrics can kill a huge range of stuff. Very cool. So what do you think about where you're going to go on your turn 1?
Yeah, so moving on to that, again, it's heavy staging. And so for this map, I'm already predetermining that, I'm going to basically hold this objective, shoot and fight everything off of here, and then this is kind of like a, depending on how the game goes, like I might throw a squad out there, but this Rhino 2 down here is mainly just to kind of disrupt and distract my opponent down here. I'm using this kind of area to stage, basically my heavy hitting stuff. Where the AC/DC come in, rapid ingress, it's either going to be up here to drive over, to my opponent's zone over here, or it might be down here just to kind of totally collapse this. And now I've got essentially these 3 held down. I'm trying to avoid this firing lane. So the Rhino will drive up, throw out some cultists, just to tag the objective, and then my other 2 squads will jump in. Now I have this Rhino fully loaded, ready to go with 2 5-man missiles. Move my Predators up so they can... This is what I found with the Predators. So while, and look, I was a big... When the edition or index first came out, I mean, kind of like everyone else, it was like Forge Fiends and then like 6 Obliterators, like a squad of 4 and a squad of 2 and 2 Forge Fiends. That was, and like in retrospect, like that was like an insane amount of firepower. And then we went to the double Vindicators. We were running that for like 6 months, and I decided that like the Vindicators were just. I mean, when they're awesome, like they're awesome. Like one-shotting Mortarion feels really awesome, and then not killing like a 10-man, like
5 Marines.
Guard,
that's my
5 Marines. Guard, like
tried to shoot 5 Marines off an objective.
Yeah,
and like there's a limit if you don't have any way of improving that consistency. There's a limit to how much you can ever win because it's not completely in your control. If you knowingly take something with no dice fixing, that is so variable. I had the same experience. Like Forge Fiends are obviously overpriced right now. Vindicators are a little overpriced right now. But Predators at 140 feels so good. They're the most point efficient damage in our codex with las cannons. Basically point for point. They just do the best. They're the most shots you can get for the money at the toughest. They're just good. They're always good.
Yeah, 100%. I was a little hesitant to again. You heard all the firepower I typically used to roll up to games with, and now just going to do Predators, I was a little hesitant of it. But the +1 AP, I mean, the autocannon within 24 inches is still 6 shots at 9.23. Like I was round 3 at the RTT on Sunday or Saturday. I was still blasting away, war dogs, just with them. And actually the the autocannons were definitely like putting in a ton of work. And where we just talked about earlier, where a Vindicator sometimes struggles just to kill 5 Space Marines, a Predator does not struggle to kill 5. Like that is almost a guaranteed, like with shitty dice rolls, like yep, like this is going to happen like time and time again. Yeah
You just have you're more consistent. The profile is crazy into infantry still, especially in Raiders. On an objective, 933. Yes, Mr. Terminators, you better pay that CP for Armor of Contempt. I'm coming for you. They have to have cover and Armor of Contempt just to get off there, just to try to do better than their 4-up invuln, which is huge. There's like so many tough things right now that are relying on making it hard, having Armor of Contempt, Bullgrin, all these things. 3 damage is great right now. There's nothing really that's running into commonly that is 3 wounds -1 damage. Deathwing Knights 4 wounds -1 damage. Damage 3 is still the most efficient thing into them besides damage 1. So yeah, I think they're really good right now, and it definitely takes a more thoughtful approach when you only get 12 autocannon shots and 4 las cannon shots a turn to make the most of those. But you got so much gas with the other stuff. It just cracks the shell, and then the hammer comes in and finishes everything off.
Yeah. So again, with the whole idea of what we're doing, this is I print this out. I take this with me. You're day 3 of a 9-round tournament. Like, dude, I don't want to be thinking about where I deploy, and I really don't want to think about where I go turn 1. So having something like this is just super helpful to be like, okay, turn 2, 3, and 4, like, I can start.
Very hard to plan.
Exactly, but I can. That's where my bandwidth is going into the game. But as far as like turns, deployment turn 1 and 2, then I've already got that preset.
Yeah, and I think in this kind of setup, I think you did a great job explaining your logic. I think people will notice that when you're making plans for the map session for Nova, it wants you to go either clockwise or counterclockwise. Mm-hmm. Just the terrain favors you. And it just depends which one you're on. And so it's kind of sets you up to trade deployment zones by turn 3 if you're a quicker army. And you're melee focused, it's very easy to stage right where the northern Nurglings are by turn 2, and then from turn 3 onwards, every turn, you just throw some missile onto their home objective, and it just becomes unholdable. Not necessarily they need to, but it's very hard to answer a Rhino in those ruins for some armies, and it's really good. I think that, I think being able to rapid ingress ACDC on the other side from where your hammer is to just all of a sudden present this really tough, go there. Because if they can't keep up, if you're able to advance into their deployment zone while they're stuck trying to fight through ACDC, that's going to be that's going to be extremely hard for them, because if you're coming from their deployment zone down south, they have no angles on you. They have no way of getting to you. It's like an unholdable position if you can get to their home deployment zone and then work your way south to whatever's left. That's kind of like something you're threatening when you have that ACDC rapid ingress threat. So I think this is a very cool plan, and I suspect you're going to have a good round 1 with it.
Cool. And then we decided to do round 5, and then Doug is going to talk about round 3 and 9. So, corner deployment, which was funny because a bunch of us were just getting ready
Let's just
for.
say this is also taken hold real quick. This is also taken hold, but this is hidden supplies. So the center objective's gone, and there are two
Yep.
objectives along the center line going from corner to corner in no man's land. So sick objective games means that everybody probably maxes primary. So the game is about secondary denial. That's your only game because it's too easy to max primary if you guys just like sit around and don't kill each other.
Yeah, for sure. But it was funny because a bunch of us were just getting ready for LSO, and some of the other, I forget which other one, but anyway, this map was not in any pack. And then as I was getting ready for Nova, I was like, oh shit, haven't even played this. But like the little things like containment can be done here and here. Like versus having to do it like on this battlefield edge and then this, complete other, other side. Um,
Yeah,
it,
you can step 1 inch out of your deployment zone and do it for one. And
yep.
if you sit in a corner, you get it for two. Yeah,
Yes.
that's pretty nice.
Yeah. So
And you're
again,
basically already in position to do locus or do area of denial. Like it's definitely a map that you have a lot of access to secondaries. So if you can stop your opponent from taking advantage of those or really max yours out, that's going to be like the only real way to get ahead points wise.
yeah, for sure. And this is something we talk about in the Discord often. Like, we're in Pariah Nexus now, and it's, you should be looking through all 18 secondaries and being like, okay, how many of these can I score turn 1? And that is through my deployment, and that is through unit selection as well. And then as the game develops, just keeping in mind like always be pushing towards your enemy's deployment zone, and then you get behind enemy lines, boom, like you're right there. You don't necessarily need, kind of like in the previous one where Nurglings were like the premier, like boom, like I'm always keeping 1 to 2 Nurgling squads in deep strike, and they're gonna do that. They don't do that anymore, but Nurglings still have the ability to do engage on all fronts, where I don't have to expose anything. And again, like these Nurglings right here, just to keep in mind too, like I have this little 6-man over here. I was running the 6-man. I had 10 extra points, so I decided, hey, I might as well go 2 by 3, because there were a lot of times where I only needed 3, like as far as space goes, but I had a 6-man. And then again, if I need the 6-man distance, which this covers way more ground than it's not in PowerPoint mode, but
Yeah, in a single deployment. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
yeah, this covers, this is the max distance, right? So I might have to throw a screen up, I might have to throw a screen like right here, and then my Cultist in Rhino 1 might have to throw another screen up here for like Orcs, for an example.
Sure.
Cool. So as far as turn 1, again, the Nurglings are just doing Nurgling things, but zip the bikes up to here. I'm going to stage a Rhino up to here, get the Cultists out. They may tag an objective just for sticky, or they more than likely they're going to have to go to the center or screen or like something to the effective there. Again, same thing. My other 2 5-man infantry squads get into the Rhinos, so the Rhinos reloaded. The Predators are in a position to respond, north or south. I've found that the best way to maximize Predators, if that is my main like shooting capability, is using them together, for harder targets. I have my other bike squad zip down here, and then this other Rhino stage is here. So I've got 2 Rhinos staged to deal with all of this. My intent is these are the 3 objectives that I care about, and I'm just going to start shooting and hammering anything that touches this objective. And then Doug and I were talking about this earlier in the pre-show, like right here and right here are just incredible places to rapid ingress. I mean, basically anything, but that is those are the 2 target locations for my my ACDC. So keeping in mind too, like having the Nurglings up here and here, turn 1, that pushes out the screen to ensure that either one, I should have the ability to get my ACDC where I want them to go. Because the worst thing that can happen when you're the rapid ingress is part of your game, is like when you have to do like something like this. And again, against super fast armies that I know can be all up in my lines, they've got 3-inch deep strike. I'm not gonna. I will be very cautious, especially with the ACDC. I might only strat reserve like the 2 rubrics, or maybe a rubrics and like a chosen squad, but keeping that big. I mean, it's 21 models. It's huge. Like it covers basically like this, you know.
Yeah, it fits in. Yeah, it's going to fit nicely behind one of those blocks, like there on the other side. But you need space for it, and so you've got to either push stuff out to screen or threaten places that they can't really get to easily. And to be honest, like either place is can be devastating. There's so few angles to shoot either of those 2 spots. North or south behind the objective, behind that larger footprint on that's touching the objective. That is just, you have to have a plan for that offensively and defensively on this layout terrain layout. It's going to catch people sleeping. People are going to be really unhappy. But like if you look at your setup right now, right where your bikes are, if something rapid ingress there, if you didn't control that space, you'd have 0 shots on it.
Right.
You would literally get put. They put Scarbrand there. It does not matter. You have 0 shots on it. That thing is walking into your base. It's going to be killing your mans. It's terrible. So, these are the kind of things you got to think about, and you got to make accounts for in your list building. And I think Mike did a great job. This is like the map that rewards you for playing ACDC.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, one quick thing before we pivot. A new guy in the Discord was asking, he's like, how do you guys use bikes? Like, I feel like bikes, I don't know how to use them. They just keep getting wasted. I think this is a great visual example of where bikes, really in several of the detachments, specifically raiders and vets, because they have stratagems that really favor them. Like, for an example, if they have like a scout squad here, I can have the bikes advance and charge out, kill the dudes, and then instead of just like sitting here or moving closer to the puck, I can use the 1 CP strat to get them behind cover, or I may want to come off the objective just to deny and then just recharge them in. That's one way. Another way is, let's say I had, for whatever reason, the cultist squad was in strat reserves, then I might not have a unit that can get out to the center turn 1, which means that's going to have to be either, a unit coming out of a Rhino, which is going to be my cheapest unit, which is going to be a 90-point Plain Jane Lego squad, or I send the 70-point bike unit to go out to the center. So you should be, committing, like when you're going to trade a unit, to do, an action or something, you want to pick like the cheapest unit to do that. And again, bikes is 70 points, movement 12. I mean, it's just a no-brainer to use them either on the flanks or maybe one squad, 1 3-man 70-point unit to go out here, do this, die, and then okay, cool. Like they got me 5 points for area denial or whatever.
That's a great steal. Yeah, and I think it's a little bit, bikes are better in some matchups than others. And Raiders, particularly, they're so valuable. They also get free auto 6 advance. So if you don't want to charge, let's say they put 1 OC over there, you just 1 CP, auto 6, go 18 inches with bikes, put 2 OC on it. You're tucked behind. It's hard for them to shoot you. And if they just move up just enough to like shoot you off the objective, boom, ACDC strats reserve right behind where they were sitting, where bikes 1 is now. And whatever they used to shoot them is about to get eaten and used as a springboard for your ACDC to be just eat up that flank. So I think this is, bikes are kind of like a pawn move in this chess game. This is just like you're throwing stuff out there and seeing what they do and trying to use them to score points. So yeah, I think this is like a perfect example.
Yep, cool. All right, moving over to you, Doug. So let's talk about the rise of the Klaus.
Rise of Klaus. Yeah, so for people who don't know, which is sad for you, but we're going to enlighten you. Khorne Lord of Skulls, KLOS. We have affectionately named Klaus, and I've actually put it on my model. That is his name. In this case, he's coming with his warlord. His warpsmith is named Carl, and they just sit together with their dog Shotzi, who's the Forge Fiend. And I'll explain this in a second. But the reason I want to play Deceptors is because I think it's fun, and I don't really have a lot of fun with a lot of the other big chaos lists out there right now. I think it is good. I've been practicing it for a while and playing around, and this list has gone through so many iterations, which was really helpful because when I started trying to make my plans for my different rounds, I had a lot of different things in my mind. And when I realized something wasn't quite right, had something I knew I could drop for something else, and I was pretty happy with where this came up to. So Chaos Lord, ideally want him with Falsehood for a cute trick to get +2 inches to charge. Not able to do that. The points didn't work out. I had to choose between a Cultist Mob and or the Chaos Lord with Falsehood and extra Nurgling Squad. But to make sure I get my points, because this list wants to just max secondaries every turn and then make it very hard for your opponent to get any primary. I just needed to sacrifice that for the Cultist. But Chaos Lord's really nice. You can 0 CP for +1, 2, or 3 to charge based on how many successful charges you've made. This is often going to be a 2 or 3. It's very reliable. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I wasn't able to charge more stuff. We have plenty of stuff to throw in for charges. So that's that. So he's going to come in with one Legionary squad that's going to start off the board almost every game. They're going to walk on the board 6 inches. Almost never strat reserve. You can't, or rapid ingress, you can, but there's really not a lot of need to unless you have a great spot for it, because you can just put them 9 inches away, 0 CP for +3 to charge, and take your 6-inch rollable charge. That's very hard to deal with. Then we have Dark Commune and Cursed Cultist unit. They're just really good. They kind of solve a lot of problems this army has, which I felt for a long time before I realized this was the way to go. You just don't have a big enough footprint in the middle of the field to gum people up very well. I tried Radagast here, and he just doesn't do enough with the kind of terrain layouts. The ACDC is insane, and here's no exception. They have very little. The only strat support they really get is they can 1 CP Detonator, which is my favorite strat. But they can 6-inch reactive move.
What does that do?
That's actually one Detonator is if your opponent has Deadly Demise and you kill them, you can force them to explode. You auto explode them.
Oh, right.
It doesn't count as a 6, which is important because orcs can't careen off of it, which very much I've had someone try to do. It does not count as a 6. It just auto explodes, and then it's like normal. I've triggered this so many times on turn 1, and it's often 12 mortals for 1 CP. It's awesome. But they can do that from the Dark Commune, which is fine. But the big thing is 6-inch reactive move is crazy, and something that also has a horde move. So if they can't get in melee, a lot of times they have to move up to you, though, and their plan is to shoot you. And they're like, okay, I can get you in 2 activations, so I'm going to move something up so it's 8 inches away, so that you can't horde move me in one go. And then they move, and you're like, okay, 6-inch reactive move, I'm now 1.1 inches away from one of your units. You get 1 activation. That's brutal, because, these reactive moves are crazy with units that have other out-of-phase moving. So that's really cool. Master Possessions with Soul Link. He's the cheapest guy who carries Soul Link. He will always just basically become a Chaos Lord every turn for the free strat. But the biggest thing is him. 8-inch movement is actually kind of crazy. And it's similar idea to the Chaos Lord. It's +2 to movement, but he also, because he moves 8 inches, but he also can 0 CP +3 to charge if you line it up right. And he's not a bad fighter. He's got his 3 damage little pistol that's devastating wound, anti-psyker, precision for some reason. So sometimes you just ruin some Necron player's day and just kill their Technomancer turn 1. That's phenomenal. I've done that once. And then in melee, he's got 4 attacks, goes up to 5, hitting on 3s, which is definitely sad, but it'll go up to strength 7, AP 2, D3 +1 damage, which is actually a really good profile. It's anti-psyker 2. I've had him slap Lord of Change for 10 wounds before. It's really funny. And then Carl, our warlord, I originally tried to run just a Khorne Lord of Skulls using Pick Them Off, which is 1 CP, full hit rerolls if you're targeting something less than starting strength, full wound rerolls if they're less than half strength. That almost never comes up. So I tried just using that to power the Khorne Lord of Skulls, and it wasn't quite enough. And then a Chinese player won a GT with a Raiders list, and he had Warsmith Khorne Lord of Skulls. And I tried that before, and it didn't feel great, but I realize now with the Cursed Cultists in there, you have this real thickness problem that some armies really struggle to get through all of your stuff in a timely fashion, and both the Cursed Cultists and Khorne Lord of Skulls, Klaus, demand an answer quickly or they're going to take over a game. So that's kind of how I ended up there. 5 Cultist squads, 3 of them will always take Infiltrate. You don't have to infiltrate them, but 3 you always assign Infiltrate. One of them always starts in Strat Reserve, and then the other either starts in the Rhino or starts in Strat Reserve, depending on the matchup. Three Legionaries, one of them's with a Chaos Lord off the board. Two of them, one of them will be Master Possession, and the other will just infiltrate, just to have 5 guys who can hop out and do stuff. It's good to have board control. I have a Rhino for basically it's the best action monkey you can have, and like Mike talked about, you just starting a cultist mob in there is really good. It just makes them go 9. It's just very great to have, and if you can work one in your list, Rhinos are overpowered, so just use them. We talked about the AC. Forge Fiend. Forge Fiends are overpriced. This thing should cost 175, maybe 170, but it specifically answers the problem. This army cannot answer hordes. It's pathetic if you try to play like into Green Tide or some kinds of Necrons or other things without 3 blast weapons. You're just going to lose. You're not going to be able to score enough points. You can't hold them off. They just out thick you. But Forge Shotzi changes all that, because if you point with the Warpsmith on the Forge Fiend, which is normally what you do, now he's hitting on 2s, exploding 6s, 3d3. You can go hazardous every time because Carl can just start healing up Shotzi. It's like a really nice little synergy. But Crusader bricks that are now coming up, you pick up 12 of them with no points invested, and then Klaus will pick up the rest, and then you never have to fight it in combat, which is great in Grimaldus Cries. Forge Fiend's Green Tide. Lucas Trawler played an amazing list at WTC. People aren't playing that list, then they're being silly. A Kroot list just won, so there are hordes out there, and you cannot win without a Forge Fiend, so that's why you have to play it, even though it's overpriced. Cornlord Skulls is amazing. I think he's really good in several lists. I want to play him in Deceptors because I think it's fun here. He has, again, very little Strat support except for full hit rerolls, which is valuable. So that's great. He's the main way we trigger Detonator. Nurglings, it's good. You should always have 1 unit. One of the changes I made is I worked this 5-man rubrics in, specifically because kind of like Flamers and Demons, there's a bunch of matchups where having 4 guys with Flamers and a Soul Reaper cannon is actually just like really problematic. So like Sisters has a problem because you flamer things, so when something moves over to kill it, you flamer that thing too, so then they have to send a 3rd thing to come kill it, because Overwatch is phenomenal. And they're like phenomenal into elves. Like if you just sit on these guys for turn 3, just like Mike has, and just walk it in someone's backfield, like the elf backfield vanishes. There's nothing survives these guys in certain matchups, and even in other matchups they're fine. They do great damage for their points, and it's never bad to have some flamers. And then I won War Dog because you have to have something that's kind of independent. You don't have any CP, you don't have any strats to really help something, and this is kind of a good way of dealing with a weak side objective. So that's it. It's such a fun list. I really enjoyed it. So let's talk a little bit about how we're deploying it. Or first, Mike, what are your thoughts?
No, I mean, it makes sense. I think, and this is something we've talked about before, where you and I are very much so like mid-table players, and just the different so what does that mean for us, right? Like where you have Derek, who he needs to chew through the midfield, maybe round 1, round 2, certainly after round 3 of a GT. Like now he's hitting like the meta, and I say that in quotations, that like everyone talks about on the internet and seems to like live or die by. But the reality is, for the vast majority
of every tournament,
well, right, yeah. But the vast majority of players, you're dealing with everything, right? Like you're not dealing with the meta, you're dealing with which everyone talks about, like you're going to see all the videos on it. StatTech talks about it, but where we deal with stuff in the mid tables is going to be everything from, yes, a meta list, but to something very, very off meta, but is still going to be a problem. So I think having, playing into, well, one, like, what do you like to play? Like, what feels good as you play? Number one, 100%. Because, Derek says this all the time. He's like, I hate playing his Cursed Cultist list. He's like, but it's what's winning for me right now. And, of course, like, he has different goals, than we do. But, like, he doesn't enjoy it as much as, like, Grey Knights or, something else, that's more of his like personal like flavor. And then this
Derek also likes variety.
What's that?
I think I think he yearns for variety. That's why he's like, you can't ever get him to play the same list twice, except for this one. Every week is it's for entertainment, but I think Derek really likes it. I think it helps keep him sharp by thinking about constantly resetting and kind of playing different things. But
For sure.
yeah, it's painful for him to have to play one thing because it's like the best thing.
Right. And then, the next part is, are you building into what the list is trying to do? And then, because, what brought me to this was what you said at the very end, as far as like the War Dog Carnivore, like independent unit. And, I was running ACDC in Vets, and while it gets zero strat support, or any support from the detachment, it's still,
Because
it's,
Abaddon's a snob. Right, that's the whole reason. Is because he hates the damned in the lore. So his detachment, the strats don't work on the damned because he's like such a snob. That's it. If Abaddon were nicer, that detachment would be busted. Okay, he should make some friends.
Agreed. But ACDC what is and was a great standalone like unit. So, again, most of your list build is into what is the detachment trying to do. And I think again, like the way you've built this out, like it's hitting what the detachment wants to do. It has flavor of how you like to play, and then also some independent units to do, to do the things that inevitably come up in every game, which is just a nice to have, right? The rubrics coming in, strat reserves turn 3 into someone's backfield, and they totally forgot to screen, like it happened to a knight player, and he had a 5-man, I don't know, super cheap squad in the back, and boom, 5 rubrics showed up, nuked them off. Now I'm affecting his home field. So,
Even if they try to screen him though, they have to get 5 guys within 12 inches to wipe whatever's holding your backfield. If there's things that aren't called infiltrators, or you're like you have that weird Crute enhancement or whatever, like you're getting backfield flamered. You just decide how you want it to hurt, and sometimes they don't have a good answer. Yeah, it's surprisingly powerful, and then the unit's just so cost efficient. It's kind of invuln, so it's a kind of a hassle. I want to play more. I desperately wish I could have another one in here, but you need the War Dog. You can't play 2, so.
Right. Cool. All right, let's talk about everyone's favorite mission, Purge the Foe.
Purge, my quick Purge aside, Purge is a garbage mission that garbage people like, and I don't want to be friends with you. I'm kidding. Not really. Purge is a terrible mission. Huge second player advantage. Really bad if your army has lots of units like mine does. So you have to have a good plan to win the game going first. And so you have to think about what are different things you can do, and what Deceptors gets to do is you just get to take turn 0 and move all your stuff into the best places they can. And so this is what I've mocked up here, is assuming everything works out and they don't have any infiltrators, which is obviously not what's going to happen. This is kind of the ideal setup. And based on what they do, I need to figure out how this plan has to adapt. And the most important structure on these maps is your defensive V, where you see, I'll explain what all the marks mean, but you explain, right, the 3 little green things, those are Nurglings.
Yep.
The guys in kind of cheese whiz yellow, that's my master possession squad. He will always be up as far as he can to run those 8 inches, get +3 to charge, hopefully, and hopefully it just ruins someone's day. On turn 1, you just need to threaten that to make them respect you. Most people won't want to run into it, but that's fine. He can just sit there, and then if you ever touch an objective, he's still going to get you. I put the pink thing, that's Klaus. I tried to draw him accurately. Everything is relatively drawn accurately to size. I did take the time to figure that out. He wants to sit there because it turns out if you basically get him right up to the line and you run him 8 inches straight forward, he will touch the terrain piece right there in front of it, and he can see through that because he's Titanic. But if you think someone's going to go north, you actually can just start him slightly to the north there, and then he can actually reach there with a pivot in 6 inches. He's going to get lines of sight above that ruin. So I'm counting on him to hold this down, because who's going to want to run into him when he's +1 to hit probably from the Warpsmith, and if you don't kill him, he's going to start healing back, and you're not going to kill him in one go. The little white scribbly bit is my Warpsmith. He's always going to be within 3 inches of that. And Shotzi, our Forge Fiend, who's in Fuchsia, because Forge Fiend and F, that's how I had to remember it. I'm very simple. So those three are always going to be kind of close together. Forge Fiend with his move can easily move up towards that V, get shots down southeast, can easily shoot across the middle if I need to. This is just a good safe place where if you got 36 inches, you have a lot of stuff in the way, you can run your ACDC out. If someone puts something out there that's not gonna, you don't have to really respect their shooting, you're just gonna put Klaus and Shotzi out and just start blasting away and wonder how quickly they can get to you. The blue box next to him is the Rhino with some cultists. ACDC, you can see the X's are the little guys on 25s, the circles are the bigger guys. I wanted to plan this out, and very specifically, I want models to be visible because I want my opponents to shoot something, and then I pull the models I want to pull so that I'm closest to the thing I want to be, and then I get a horde move in that direction. The way the horde move works, and I've confirmed this with the Nova judges, and we had a big back and forth, so I make sure we were all in agreement how this worked, because it's been contested by some people, is that a unit moving closer to the closest unit is the closest model in that unit moving closest in a straight line to the closest model in the closest unit. So that's all that defines it. No other model in the unit defines if you're closest. You just define the two closest models. So they can go wherever they want. So if you get a 6-inch move, one guy runs in a straight line 6 inches, and every other guy gets to run 6 inches anywhere you want as long as they're in coherency. So if you can bait a horde move and then pull models in a direction that's favorable to you, you're just getting free movement. Now on your turn, you advance and charge. They have their best day ever, so you now get to have moved 4d6 plus 6 inches because you got a d6 on their turn, a d6 advance, a 2d6 charge. Like, it just makes them scary, and you can't do that against everybody. You're not going to do it if they can just one-tap you, but most things right now don't have huge shooting profiles, and you want them to mistakenly take a shot and then start making some movement. And if they don't, then great, you're just on the line. You've just been as close to them as you can. And then carnivores, big red circle, red because carnivores eat meat, I guess. That position can't get shot. I put out some, you can see the firing line just to show you that you really can't hide anything behind that grate right there in the bottom. So on this map, you have to hide back further. And this is one of the reasons why Carnivore is so good. 14 inches takes him just over that little terrain. He can easily make his rerollable charge onto that spot. If they don't throw something out that a Carnivore needs to go clear, that's where your Warp Flamers come in, your rubrics, right on that southern edge, pick up anything on that objective, and you've kept that clear. So kind of like Mike's plan, our job is Klaus is going to make it so they can't put anything in the middle or anything up top, so they can only fight for that southern objective. I'm going to not directly engage them, but I'm going to try to push for their home objective and make them decide what they want to defend. But I get to be more mobile. I get to have multiple things come from Strat Reserve. And, the reality is everything that trades on this board that isn't Klaus makes Klaus stronger. And that's why I think the Warpsmith is worthwhile, because it's just inevitability. The longer this game goes on, the less stuff my opponent has. Klaus is that much scarier. And he's almost always there when I end my games, and he's almost always just have bullied someone out because they couldn't get to him fast enough. So yes, that's kind of my plan there. That one cultist squad up in the top with a question mark next to it, that's basically if I need to screen that space out. That's why you always give 3 infiltrate. Maybe I need that in some matchups. If not a big deal. You could just leave them in Strat Reserve. But these are the kind of things you can think about. If they can't do something with that space, I just let them score it. It's not a big deal if they have to get back there, if they're not going to threaten the stuff that matters to me, because I'm not trying to play Purge, which is really second player advantaged. I can't play slow. If I'm first, I have to go full send to kill them, otherwise they're always going to beat me. So that's my plan. Rapid escalation means that I can do those Rubric and the Legionary Strat Reserves on turn 1, which is awesome. You could, and that's the cool thing about that. But otherwise, this is like a pretty straightforward plan. And when I practice all this, just so people know, I never get the first deployment. I always make my opponent deploy first with their infiltrators, so I never have gotten the perfect setups. And the army still plays very well, so I'm very happy with that. What are your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, let me ask you this. So, we were talking about this earlier. Round 3 on Saturday, I played into Knights. which again is like the worst matchup for any army that has a bunch of dudes, especially mainly Space Marines, and Purge the Foe. So in Purge the Foe, are you making the decision to still be aggressively out here?
Yeah, there's no way, dude. I have too many units. There's no way I can prevent them from getting stuff unless I give up the center of the board. So it would. I don't know what. I'm not saying there's zero matchups where I wouldn't do that, but it would have to be so incredibly unique for me not to want to place one squad every game aggressively. Because if I go first, they're advancing,
Right.
And assuming they don't have an Overwatch threat, they're advancing, and you don't get a move. If they go second, after one thing moves, they 1 CP move 6 inches up and just jail you in the rest of the way. And they're specifically in position so that a 6-inch move fully jails out everything. Because of the way the terrain is, it will fully jail out basically any vehicle trying to get anywhere on the north half of their deployment zone, or the north, that whole quadrant
Right.
is just stuck. Everything will have to come or just sit there for a turn. And again, if your game plan, if you're this like tons of unit army and you know you're going to lose if the game goes long, jamming them up for one turn and keep preventing them from getting primary even one turn might be enough to to put them on the back foot, and then you can get shots before they get shots. Those are the kind of things you have to go for when it's a terrible mission, and you're an army that particularly has a problem with that mission.
Right. Cool, man. No, looks solid, dude. I'm interested.
Another cute thing.
Go ahead.
One other cute thing I forgot about the squad on the south, the cultist squad. All the black X's are cultists. I'm sorry that
Yeah, figured.
to the enemies thing. There you go. So one of the cute things you can do here is if you put your cultists kind of like this, they have to come way far south to shoot you, which is not ideal, but you're both Klaus and your Forge Fiend will get shots back when they do that. So like you're happy if they do that. So what I've had someone try this where they try to just run up and tap the objective, but if you haven't had to use your reactive move, like let's say they have an Overwatch threat, so you're not going to reactive move your other squad, you just reactive move that guy and put 2 guys on the objective. And believe it or not, like just being able to do things like that really screws up people's plans a lot of times, because what it makes them do is they have to realize that they either kill you or you're getting the objective. They cannot play this, I'm going to put guys in the objective and out OC you, which is how a lot of armies kind of get around interaction that's hard to get around because of terrain. But they can't do this army because I always get the last say. I always can react and move more guys onto the objective.
Right. No, it's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm very excited about it. It's fragile. Things can go very bad very quickly, but I really enjoy the army, and it's like very different. So
Yeah, hell yeah, man. All right. So we've got Ritual and Swift Action. Swift Action is they can advance an action.
yeah, it's incredible, which is very cool. It's not super helpful in the Ritual though, which is kind of a funny pairing because if you see the little peach lines I put next to my opponents, that's where the first objective can go. And after that, it gets a little more funny. But in general, people are going to swing north or south along those lines as they build objectives. And they'll just build them kind of along that semicircle, and then they'll try to plop everything there. That, thankfully, is a really bad plan against a Khorne Lord of Skulls, because that is like a straight line rush distance. And if you put anything out at all onto the middle of this table, Klaus can just walk through the terrain and charge you, and now he's in your deployment zone, so you better have an answer. So that's one thing that's really I like about this mission is I have a ton of stuff, so I can easily I can always make more objectives. Your opponent is incentivized to not spread out so they can defend their cluster of objectives, and that's what this army is best, because it can spread out, take up the whole board, but then collapse real easily because we don't have to move there. We just get to start there because of infiltrate. So I have some yellow X's down on the bottom. That's where I have some legionaries that are probably going to start. The orange squad is the MOP, some Nurglings. The reason to take that setup is specifically you just need to know that if you're against jump pack infantry, you have to put something there. Otherwise, they're going to get you. Yep. That's like the spot you need to do to keep your home objectives, like your home little castle, safe from Blood Angels. Because you don't really care if they come up close to your MOP, because again, you can reactive move, but but you want to make sure that their only charge target is that Rhino. So if they can't go south to try to charge the Forge Fiend, because they can get there too. So they have to come north, and then you can reactive move your MOP out of the way, and then they can charge the Rhino, which is fine. And maybe they can bump into Klaus and get a few attacks off, and that's okay if they're going to trade their biggest Def Company brick or Vanguard Vet brick for a Rhino and some wounds on Klaus. This is just specifically, you just have to know about like the big extreme plays. So that's where the Nurglings are there for. Is it turns out that kind of solves that problem for me. The Fuchsia Circle down south is Shotzi, our Forge Fiend. Again, she's always going to hang out kind of on the other side of the Warpsmith. She can get shots down south if people come around that way. So again, it just disincentivizes you from spreading out. She can get shots there. Exactly, she can go north and get shots in the middle. Our Rhino is very helpful for doing stupid stuff. The Carnivore's off on the flank. You'll notice that ACDC's not here. This is the time where I'm always going to strat reserve ACDC because you don't really know. They have no incentive to go to either side of the board, so you can't really plan unless you want ACDC in the middle, but I want Klaus there because he's the most terrifying thing on the board.
Right.
So you have to make them respect the flanks a little bit so they don't just screen you out. So putting a Carnivore on that basically abandoned north quadrant is that anything they put there to screen you out is just going to get traded for a Carnivore, and it will take some effort to kill them. But again, just like the other map we talked about with you, they're, because of where these big terrain bricks are, only 4 inches off the side of the no man's land. Rapid Ingress is Strat Reserve and Rapid Ingress are busted here, particularly if you go to the bottom right corner. Even further to the right, like all the way there. That area is crazy hard for them to deal with unless again they're sitting on their home battlefield edge. Mm-hmm. Like you just 6 inches is a long way. That's a hard place to have angles on, and again, they may not want to spread that way. If they don't, you have this huge opportunity. If they do, then you have the same opportunity to get into their home objective on the opposite side.
Right.
So this is kind of the plan here. Rubrics. This is the one matchup one map where I might start the Rubrics and the Rhino on the board. In general, just because you know where the objectives are going to be and you know where you want your flamers to go to roast things on objectives. So that's kind of how you get your ACDC squad and your Lego squad and your Lord and your Cultists all in Strat Reserve with ACDC. You have to put the Rubrics on the table, but that's like a very small concession here. So very similar kind of plan. And again, there's almost no way I can think of where I'm not going to want to start this squad up on the line. Because again, if you're just not careful, and someone just makes any movement within 9 inches, I'm moving 6 inches up, and they can make their objective, but you can control it. So what's really funny is if they, they actually have to kill all your cultists. They can't just ignore them and be like, whatever. You can make the objective all you want, but it's really funny. I had a situation where I moved my cultists behind a wall one time. They made an objective, and then I controlled it from the other side of the wall. So I just didn't move them, and then I controlled that objective and scored points the next turn. Right. That was pretty funny. But this is kind of, if we get to round 9, if either of us still have a back or a will to live, or we ever want to play Warhammer again, this is my plan for a very weird mission.
Yeah, well, and for sure, because Ritual is a frustrating mission, and again, back to what we said at the beginning, having all this preloaded in our minds on our phone or printed out on a piece of paper that's just on your cart or your tray or whatever is it is such a nice thing when you're where are we, what are we doing, and you pull this up and you're like, oh, okay, cool, got it, and you're already 2 steps ahead, whereas round 9, for us in the mid tables, now you're entering the target zone for people who are going 6 and 3.
Yeah, you're gonna run into sharks. You're gonna run into people who are threats to win the tournament, but maybe they got a couple bad matchups, or they ran into one of the other favorites to win the tournament, and all of a sudden, if you're still playing round 6, 7, 8, 9, and you're any sort of positive win rate, things get scary, man. You run into people who really know how to play.
Right.
So you want to have the least mental load you can going into those rounds. Day 3 is tough already. Day 3 against people who take this game super seriously is, they can be super pleasant, but often they're very good. And I usually do very well around most, day one I usually do good. Day two I start feeling it. Day three, man, have I gotten stomped by some amazing players who just had some bad luck. And it's great, but man, it just it's a little demoralizing to end your tournaments getting smacked around by people who have won GTS and things.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point as well. Like, and Nova is because it's so big, and the way they do it is I believe it's round 4 is when you kind of get locked into your brackets. Yeah. So like round 1 is important, round 4 is really important, and then day 3, in my opinion, is also really important for people who are going to go, X and 2, X and 3. At the end of the day, for me, like, I definitely want to, although I wasn't super upset with like 3 and 3, or last year I went 4 and 4. I definitely would like, the minimum to be, 50%. But like I said, or like you were saying, the end of the tournament is when it's kind of like, it's like the bell curve. In the beginning, you could play anybody, and then round 8 and 9, 7, 8, 9, you could also play anybody.
But the people who are still left want to be there. So
right.
Like they're often, in my experience, they're often great games, but usually they're very one-sided. And I've been on both sides of that. Not that I'm the best player, but again, your tournament can go a lot of different ways. And so sometimes you get got, and sometimes you're going to get people, and but it's fun. And I think that's what day 3 I think is really interesting. You definitely can submarine in Nova to like a really good looking X2 record. But the way the Nova does their breakdowns, I think that actually happened maybe last year. But if you look down the breakdown, the highest you can ever get is like 65th. So the best you can do for your placings and your ITC points and feeling good is not your record. It's get to that top bracket, and then just, even if you get the crap kicked out of you, you made top bracket at Nova. That is accomplishment.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
Harder. That's harder than winning an RTT, in my opinion, is to get 4-0 out of Nova and into that top bracket. Or I think even X and 1 can make it sometimes. That is, that's what you want to go for. That's a huge, that's my hope. That would be me winning this tournament, is just hitting the top bracket would be very successful.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point as well, because like LVO doesn't do brackets, right? Like it's these longer longer round GTs where like the brackets matter, and like there's also prize support and stuff for winning your bracket. So it's almost like kind of day 1, or the first 4 rounds. It's almost like, for people like us, right, in the mid tables, it's like you're kind of setting the conditions for what bracket you're going to end up with. So you're generally with similar players as far as like capability, and then that makes it just that much more competitive, because now, like, as best as the pairing system and the scoring system is, like, you are closer to your player level, which again, it's going to be 50-50, right? Like, I feel like if I go against someone at my level and above, it's a crapshoot. At my level and below, I feel comfortable usually pulling a win out of those games. But rounds 1, 2, and 3, who knows who you're gonna run into. So again, in my opinion, in my mind, and for practice, right? If I can only practice like 3 games, I'm definitely gonna practice round 1. I'm gonna play round 4, and then I may play around.
Do round 5. I will say why. I just looked something up here because Nova did this differently last year. I'm like 92% sure it was different.
It was only 8 rounds last year.
It was 8 rounds, but also they did the bracket system differently. They actually had 2 brackets where you bracketed once and then bracketed again at 6, I think. I thought, maybe not, maybe Mr. Marine. But the bracket was different. I just know this because, but I just looked at it. Only undefeated people can make it to the bracket, so that's not realistic for me. But that's a 5-0 record to make it in. That's obviously harder than winning an RTT. But if I can even go, X1 would be huge. I'd be happy with the 3-2, assuming I don't submarine and go 0-2, 3-2. I'd probably even be fine with that. But yeah, man, it's going to be a cool tournament. And there's one more thing I was going to say about the this format, which was a little different, is that I think it was nice of them. Nova previously sometimes, or I think usually needed a shadow round, and now they don't have to, which is kind of a huge deal. I think just to plan for the 9 rounds and make it so people have more reasonable expectations of what's going to happen. So I thought that was cool that they're doing this year, and so I think it's going to be a great tournament.
One last thing, if you are going to Nova, the way they use clocks is different. So you can't.
The way they don't use clocks?
Correct. Until, and they do a good job of being like, hey, players, if you're not at top of round whatever by this time, like call a judge. And then you throw a clock on. So it's good and bad because, I was playing a Necron player round 4. And awesome dude, it was a great game, but like this guy was playing at the speed of decay. And when it got to a point where we needed to call the judge over, it was like I had to like fast play. Which kind of brings me to another point. I think in your practice games, sometimes it's good to force yourself to just be like, hey, I'm only going to do 10-minute rounds. I actually set a timer on my watch to depending on the round. Round 2 and 3, I usually set 20 minutes. Round 1, I set 10 minutes, and just to make sure I'm staying on time on my internal time clock, because it's like super easy to let yourself run away. The last game that Derek and I played, it was more my Nova prep, and he was laughing at the end. He's like, you had like it was something like 16 minutes for 2 turns. But again, rounds 4 and 5, as long as you have in your mind of like, yep, these are the things I need to do.
Acceptable.
What's that?
More than 10 is usually enough. It can be, you can have really complicated turn 4 or 5, but like on average, if you have 10 to 15 minutes, you should be able to get through turn 4 and 5.
5 minutes around. Yeah. Cool, man. Awesome. Well,
on that note, I'm going to make one other thing. So you can't use clocks, or you can. They're non-binding, so there's no point. You cannot make your opponent on the clock, so you have to talk to the judges. So one thing I would say is the judges at Nova are historically have been very friendly, very reasonable, and they come around often and check on people, and they say things like, hey, where are you guys at, if they seem like a game's going slower. So I would not, if it were me and I'm playing in a format, it will be me, but if you're also at Nova and you feel like you're struggling to get through a round on time, say it early, because I did have this happen last year at Nova where someone was super, super slow, and I just said it early, and they gave my opponent and me time. Like they said, okay, you have 30 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes, you're done with this turn. Like they made it clear that we have to divide the time evenly, and you have to go. And that was really helpful. Is that the best way of doing it? Probably not, but it's a very reasonable way to do it, because it's not like he and I were playing for the championships.
Right.
So don't be afraid to engage the judges. You're not doing something mean because you want to play your part of the game. Just be nice, make them help. Just be like, I want to help us get through in a reasonable amount of time, so we both get equal time to play the game. And then the last thing about that was, I forgot it again. It'll never come back to me. We're all dead now. No, it was just that this is like a really fun tournament. The new site is great. I hope everyone goes and has a good time. If you come out, you should see all of us. We'll all be there hanging out. Derek has like banners, and I think he's got an outfit. And if I hear, no, I'm kidding. But I think it's going to be a great tournament, a great time, and hope you guys really enjoy looking at kind of how we think about these things and how we talk about things, and hope this was educational. And if you like more of this, we can do more of this. And if this was terrible, then tell us that, and Mike can fire me.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, again, this is a snapshot. This is the stuff that Doug and I talk about. This is the stuff that we talk about with the people that we coach. So again, if you like the stuff, let us know. If you don't like it, let us know. And if you want coaching, which right now is just $25 a month, to be a Patreon, you'll talk to Derek. He'll assign you to someone who is as close to what army you're playing. You do get access to all of us, and we all try to tag team and help each other For an example, had a guy from Team Malta play at WTC, and one of my other guys I coach, he was playing his first GT in Vietnam. And again, we are there to help you, like, look through the lists, let you know, like, hey, these are the possible lists you're gonna, come up against, and these are maybe some strategies, to deal with that. So that's kind of, again, the intent of this and kind of the direction that we're trying to push, dirtbags as a whole in the future.
That's that, man. This has been great chat with you. We hope to connect with you guys again, and you'll be hearing from us. Derek's got a game. Got games coming up before Nova. You'll get to see more, and then we're going to tear it up. And I think you're going to hopefully see him on War Games Live. I think there's maybe another stream. Oh, not War Games Live. It's somebody else is streaming this year. So we're all really excited, and we can't wait to see you guys. And keep having fun out there, Dirtbag Nation.
Cool. All right. Later, Doug.